later, whatever later means to you. But for me, it was my kids all left when I was in my 50s or late 50s. And now I realize life starts. A lot of life starts in your 50s and 60s. Because there are, I mean, it's a time for anyone, but women especially, moms especially. It's a time to really like look at yourself in the mirror and recognize that you have a ton to offer.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Empty Nest. I'm your host, Jody Silverman, speaker, mentor, and Chief Dare Officer at Moms Who Dare. Every Thursday, I'll share stories of midlife transformation, happiness tips, and dare you to see the opportunities waiting for you so that you can make this next chapter even better than the last. If you're ready to dare, I'm ready to dare with you. Let's get into today's episode. Last month was huge for thousands of moms everywhere. It was College Move-In Month. It's for this reason I have this special bonus episode for you today. So here's the question for today. How do you handle goodbyes? Some of us find it easier than others. Personally, I was always one of the last girls to leave my sorority at the end of the school year, dreading the moment when I had to say farewell while still seeing others standing around. As moms, we face countless goodbyes with our children, but none are quite as emotionally charged as the empty nest. Whether our kids leave for college, join the service, or step into the working world, empty nest syndrome is a real thing. For some, it brings a wave of sadness that might last a few days or weeks, but for others, it hits much harder, bringing on feelings of depression and anxiety. And today, my guest is one of those moms who really felt the weight of these goodbye moments, especially with an empty nest. She discovered the importance of finding support to navigate these tough transitions, and she's here to share her journey with us. Morgan Baker writes about family, mental health, dogs, change in identity in her award-winning memoir, Empty Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes. It's about reinventing yourself, learning how to handle loss, and emerging from depression. Morgan, welcome to Beyond Empty Nest.
Well, thank you, Jody. I'm so excited to be here. This is like my wheelhouse. Love talking about this stuff.
Oh, I know. And as I tell my audience all the time, I get I'm lucky because I get to meet my guests before we hit record on an episode. And we had a really great conversation. And this is a bonus episode because after our conversation and reading your book, which for those of you not watching and just listening, I'm holding it up and you can find a link in the show notes and check it out after the episode. After reading Emptying the Nest, Getting Better at Goodbyes, and speaking to you about your journey, I just knew that this was an important conversation because it's as this is airing, it's September, and moms are feeling the weight of the goodbye, the weight of the loss in their life. So I thought, who better to have this conversation as somebody who's been through the weight of it and came out the other side, and you're here to support those women. So thank you. Thanks for saying yes.
Oh, of course. I'm very happy to be here.
All right. So before we're going to get into, the episode, which we're calling this episode, They're Gone Now, What? Empty Nest and Embracing Change. And before you can actually do that, you do go through some challenges. So before we get into the guts of this conversation, share a little bit of the backstory of what happened to you, how it all began for you that, goodbyes were really difficult for you.
Thank you. So for me, my parents got divorced when I was 10, and it was in the 60s before divorce became, not popular, but, now when people get divorced, like the parents live in the same neighborhood, they share, then that wasn't so common. And it just abruptly changed my life dramatically. And so I became very scared of change because to me, it was associated with loss. And I definitely got a little bit better over the years, but I sort of knew in the back of my head, when the kids go, I actually knew it when my first daughter was born, because, when if you are birthing a child, they're with you 24/7 until they're not. And I sort of like, after that happened, I was like, oh my God, this is the beginning of her leaving. Um, and there's so many steps along the way. So I knew, when kindergarten happened, I knew that was hard. All of those little steps were hard. When she went to camp, that was hard. So for me, I knew that watching my older daughter go to college was going to be tough. A lot of people have asked me, like, why the first child as opposed to the last child, because that's sort of what people think, like, you still have a kid at home. So, but for
Yeah.
me, it was the change of family. It was the family will never be the same as it was, but I didn't know it was going to be quite so hard as it turned out to be. And part of it was, we also, as our last family adventure, we decided that we would breed our dog and have a litter of puppies. And a lot of people thought we were completely out of our minds. And it was one of the best things we've ever done. And I wasn't completely on board with it because I was so afraid of what might go wrong. But then we did it, and it was like, this is the best. We got to watch these little puppies come into life. We watched the mom dog become a mom in a way that I had not become a mom. For her, it was just absolutely instinctual. There was no like, oh, for me, I remember the first night I had Maggie home. We live in a two-family, and so we had an apartment downstairs, and I heard the young man go out in the evening, and I thought, I'm never going to do that ever again.
Mm.
And but for Spray, our dog, she was just like, this is it. And she knew how to count her puppies by smelling them, and knew when to feed them, knew how to wean them. Even little things like that. When I weaned mine, from breastfeeding, I let my daughter sort of um, show me the roadmap,
Yes.
and do it according to what they needed. And Spray was completely different. Spray was like, yeah, I'm done. And, she'd run across the room, and all these little puppies would be underneath her trying to grab on. And so I learned a lot from her. But what really happened was, we started to say goodbye to those puppies, because we had 10 puppies, and we're not going to keep 10 puppies. We did keep one, but we found homes for the others. And every time I handed a puppy over, I watched the new family like just beam with happiness. Like, we were giving them this incredible addition to their family, but it also meant that I was letting go. And I was completely shocked at how sad that made me.
Yeah.
Um, so then when Maggie left, I thought, oh, I've practiced and I've got this down. And I was so wrong. And Maggie going to college was the first. And also, she has had and still has life-threatening food allergies. So that compounded my sort of, her departing. Um, and then we came home, and she wasn't here.
Yeah.
Um,
I have to interject because
yeah,
just because you said so many good things. I mean, the fact that, and I think you said something at the very beginning where it started with the divorce, because that divorce, no matter how it is trauma for children, even in the most amicable situations, a divorce is trauma. And I really think it's important that you share that. So for you, change was associated with loss. So and that's a big deal. So
absolutely.
to find out where your deep rooted feelings of why you're so resistant, why you have a visceral reaction or whatever your reaction is, to understand that self-awareness is understand, why am I feeling so strongly about this? Putting aside your love for our daughters, and then the other thing you said, and the birthing of them. And for those that didn't birth their children, just the handing of an infant to you and
Sure.
however you get it. And so I like how you said, so to understand why, if change is a thing for you, maybe diving deeper into the awareness as to what changed in your life that left you feeling angry, sad, worried, anxious, because that's a trauma. And then you also said something really, really, really important. I talk about this a lot. People, why, why are you upset? I really don't like when people say, well, it's your first, you still have one or two children at home. And it took me a minute to understand it too, but I understood it too, because when my daughter, I have two, and when my oldest left, they're 3.5 years apart, the entire dynamic of the house changes. The personality of the family in the house changes. And when you can move through it, it was great because I had focused time with my son. And that's my perspective of how I got out of it is I miss my daughter and I miss the presence and I miss walking in the room saying, does this outfit look good? And her telling me, no, mom, you need color. My son doesn't want me to ask him his opinion. And yet I got to embrace being just a mom with Dan at that time. So those are two big things. What do you associate goodbyes with? And understanding that the first is hard because the whole dynamic with each child who leaves, the personality of the family changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, so the goodbye and change thing definitely originated with my parents'
Yep.
divorce. And we we lived in New York, and when my parents decided that this, marriage was on the rocks, which was news to me as
I
a then 9-year-old,
think it always
they
is.
sat, yeah, they sat us down and told us that my mother was going to take me, I was 9, my brother's 7, and a baby sister who was 6 months old to London. And and we were like, oh, okay. Um, so we went to London and I finished my fourth grade year in London. And then we moved back, but we didn't move back to New York. We moved to Cambridge because it was close to where my mom's sister lived. So I went through a lot of
Yeah.
upheaval in a very short period of time, and also lost in the as a kid, my feeling was that I lost my dad.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you lost your dad and your feeling. You went, not only did you moved to another culture, a whole nother stratosphere, so to speak. And then when you come back, you went back to even a different place. So yeah, it's a lot of change.
I also lost friends. And I don't think I fully appreciated that until I was older. Um, and oh, I know what I was going to say. My dad gave recently in the last year or so, my dad gave me a folder full of the correspondence that I had had with him since I was 10. And I yeah,
Wait,
that
for
was,
those of you that aren't watching, my jaw just hit the ground that your father saved all that.
yeah. Yeah, and he coincidentally lives in England now, which is just a total
Okay.
like coincidence.
Okay.
But so he handed me this package, and I thought I need to be in the right space when I start to read these things, because I also went through a lot of anger as a teenager. But I pulled something out of a bag the other day, and the folder opened up, and these letters fell out, and I picked one up, and it was from 1968. And I don't have it in front of me, so I can't read it, but it basically was talking about what I wanted for Christmas. And I said something about, I'm trying to circle the things I want in the catalog or whatever. But there's one thing that I do want that cannot, that no one will be able to find in a store, and that is you. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I
I,
just got chills.
yeah, and it was in capital letters, and I hadn't read, I mean, that was in 1968. And I read it to my daughter, and she was like, "Oh my God." So it's just to say that
Yeah. So
loss,
all the change in your life, you translated to you as change equals loss. Change
right,
equals loss. Lost my father, lost my friends, lost my home, lost what I knew. Change equals loss. So yeah, more Maggie's leaving for college. That's loss. You had to part with 9 of your 10 puppies. That's loss. I get it. And so you share that you collapsed into a deep depression. So I want to move forward now. I
yeah,
want to move forward now that everybody has a really good idea because it's so important to share our stories because somebody out there will see themselves in your story, whether they felt themselves in the same emotion that you felt, or even just a little bit of it, it's important because we're more alike than we are different. And moms, no matter how you're a mom, I don't care. Moms, and I love dads. Dads matter. Look what your dad did. He saved your letters. I just feel like nothing in life can take a confident decision-making woman and knock her on her ass than that of becoming a mom.
Oh,
Period. It
yeah.
has you can be the best decision maker, and then you're questioning everything because you're a mom now. So let's talk about, because now you have a different take. When we decided to sit down and talk about empty nest and embracing change, one of the talking points we talked about was to talk about how change can be fun. That's
Mm.
a big pendulum swing from change equals loss to change can be fun. So how do you get there? Like what, like short, like good tips on, and using your story, like how do you recommend somebody listening to this who is right now, it's been 2, 3 weeks, their son or daughter is gone. They are devastated. They are sitting in their room crying. They can't even function. How do you tell them, how do you get them to see and take the first steps towards finding the fun in the change?
So
Big question.
yeah, it is a big question. And I think I mentioned it in my book that when we took our second daughter to college and dropped her off, which was basically around the corner, when we got back in the car, there was a woman sobbing into her phone, leaning against a building, just
Yeah.
absolutely sobbing. And I wanted to jump out of the car and give her a hug and say, I made it. You'll be fine. It's a process.
You did share that in the book.
But I decided that she probably would think that
Right.
had lost my marbles, so I didn't. But I do think that it is a process. It isn't something that happens overnight. But the more you can look at yourself and recognize other aspects of who you are separate from being a mother. Being a mother will never change. I mean, you are a mother. I'm still an active mother, even with a 32-year-old and a
Yes.
29-year-old. But I also know, and it did take me a long time to figure this out, that I'm more than a mother. And I have interests, I have friends, I have a husband, I've discovered that I like adventure because, again, adventure always to me was scary and could be loss. And so some of it was, um, and I also will say having the support of people that care about you also really helped. My husband was really remarkable, and I had some good. Not everyone knew quite how bad things had gotten.
And not everybody has to know.
Right. Um, so, but I did finding out that there were things that I was good at also,
Well,
like, yeah, I quilt
yeah, I
and
was going to say in your book, you said, I am more than a mother. I'm a quilter. I'm this, I'm that, and you named it. And I think that that's what the whole, this is called Beyond Empty Nest, but my community is called Moms Who Dare, Morgan, which you know. And for those of you that are part of the community, you know that everything I talk to is I built on the foundation of daring, which is just my fun word to make it fun, not scary. Daring, which is trying new things, or daring to think about what are things I used to like and be good at.
right,
Like,
right,
and I like how you said that, to recognize that you are, yes, a big part of our identity is that of being a mom. And I have a t-shirt that I wear that says motherhood, a life sentence, with a big heart, because it is. So get over it. You're always going to be a mom. It's a fun, and yet you're more than just your role of mom. I did a whole podcast about that with another empty nest coach. So what are you? So I'm a quilter. I'm a good friend. I'm a daughter. I'm a lawyer. I'm a writer. You're a writer. Like, I love how you say that, to take a step back. Yes, I'm a mom, and not but.
right.
Yes, I'm a mom, and what else am I?
So one of the other things that I was able to do, uh, because I didn't have kids at home, similar to your business that you have, is I've been a teacher for all my adult life, at Emerson mostly,
Yeah.
but now I have a Zoom presence also, and I teach on Zoom. I never would have done that. First of all, we none of us knew that Zoom existed, but I never would have done something like that when my kids were at home. I didn't, there wasn't the space for it. And now I definitely feel like I'm more Morgan. I'm more like the Morgan I was before I had kids.
Yeah.
But I also am a broader and deeper Morgan because I had kids.
And let me ask you this. Do you feel that your kids see that and find you more interesting? And I mean, I say, do you feel that way? Like,
Absolutely. I wrote a piece recently for a publication that was all about role models and the role models I had in my life that made me realize that later, whatever later means to you, but for me it was my kids all left when I was in my 50s or late 50s. And now I realize life starts. A lot of life starts in your 50s and 60s. Um, because there are, I mean, it's a time for anyone, but women especially, moms especially. It's a time to really like look at yourself in the mirror and recognize that you have a ton to offer, and not just offer to other people, but to offer to yourself, and what is it that makes you happy? And sometimes it's scary. My husband and I lived in Hawaii. Okay, I never, ever, ever would have said, "Oh, I'm going to go and live in Hawaii." That would have just been like, I mean, it just
okay.
no. And I did it, and I was terrified, but I did it, and it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
So I love this. I love that life because we had this life before kid. We had this life as before we even had our significant other in our life. We were
Right.
teens, we were 20 some year olds. And then, you advance 30, 40. And I do believe that motherhood, yes, it becomes the focus. It has to be. You're raising children. You're raising a human being who can't do a thing for themselves from day one. And then you have to let go a little bit more as they go. But I love how you say that life starts again in the 50s and 60s. Yes, it does. And going back to what you said, it's a process, it's a practice. If you really can't figure out a way to start, you get the help you need from a
Right.
therapist, a coach, or friend. If you just need ideas, people come to the Moms Who Dare group just to get ideas on what to do. And I always say, go back and think about, what did I like doing? I used to like to bike ride. I used to want to cook all the time. So take a cooking class. You dare to try new and different things. You now have space for you, space for something new and different in your life. So what can you do with this newfound space and time? And it doesn't have to be anything grand. I love what
No.
you're talking about here, that now you teach and now you have a Zoom that you can teach. You can add into your teaching, reach more people, make a difference to more people. I love that. And with that, there's something else you say that you said to me. You said, you're not saying goodbye, your relationship is evolving. And I think that's important. I didn't want to skip over that because I love that we're in the daring part because we already talked about asking for help, whether it be mental health or finding friends to support you. It goes without saying, find help. It is not a weakness, it is a strength to ask for help. I tell my kids when they went off, when they set a budget for themselves, add in a couple $100 extra a month for a therapist. Everybody
Yes.
should have a therapist on call. We can all use help. And yet I love when you said you're not, if you can flip the perspective, everything's perspective. If you can take a moment out of your grief and say, I'm not saying goodbye, my relationship's evolving. So how do you feel like your relationship has evolved with your children or as a mom?
I think that I said this at a book launch. Somebody said, "So what does getting better at goodbye mean?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good question." Um, and I think that it is an evolution. I have not said goodbye to I mean, my kids are gone, but they're still a huge part of who I am. And the relationship we have is more adult based and fun. In some ways it's more fun because I'm
Yeah.
not saying clean your room or help clear the dishes or any of that stuff. And so one of my daughters is here now visiting, and I just booked her a pedicure. And it's like I love doing fun things with her. We've been playing cards a lot. And there's not that pressure of like school or jobs or anything. And so I think the relationship changes. I even said that when somebody passes, dies, which is a terrible loss, and my mom died very, on the younger side, that you don't, that you still have a relationship with that person. Um, it doesn't just, it's not like you say goodbye and then like somebody slices a piece of pie and you're done.
Mhm.
Um, my mom is still a very big part of me, and my kids, I love hanging out with my adult children.
I
And
do
love
too.
seeing, I love watching them grow in a way that, like, when they live with you, you're intimately like, oh, try this new food, or,
Right.
why don't you try ice skating or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're adults and they're trying new things and they're experimenting and they're realizing, oh, I didn't, it's like figuring out what you want to do professionally and watching them. It's like, it's almost like a part of you is doing it while they're doing it.
Yeah, you're watching them become. I
Yeah,
always say, if here's another incentive to work at the practice and the process of moving through the grief, is that while you're in the grief, you can't see your children becoming.
right.
You can't see, and that is amazing and exciting. And yes, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can see them fall. Sometimes, what they set out to do doesn't work out perfectly. And yet you get to still be the mom, but you're more of like a coach and advisor there. You're just holding space for them if they need support. And then you watch them get up and figure it out with
Yeah,
a little help from you or without help from you. And that's beautiful. And I love that because the relationship is always evolving. Our relationships with ourselves are is always
absolutely.
evolving. And I mean, our kids are watching. They might not look. These are the very me years, the college years, and up until their like early 30s are they're me centric, which they get to be because they're trying to figure out life. Think about when we were 20s and 30s, it was all about me. It wasn't about my parents. Um, I call them the selfish years, but not selfish in a bad way. And yet they are still watching. And if they see their mom becoming reinventing herself. I mean, my kids are proud of me. They tell me all the time that I have a podcast.
Right,
Are you kidding me?
right. No, my kids are really proud of me,
Yeah.
and it's really fun because we're so used to being proud of our kids. It's an incredible feeling to have your kids be proud of you and see the hard work. Like I mean, I worked really hard on this book for a long time,
Good. I'm gonna
and
hold
for
it up again
them,
for those watching the video. Emptying the nest, getting better goodbyes. What a great title.
oh, thank you.
Getting better goodbyes. You wrote, yeah, and so well, I gotta write this. Somebody wrote, quote, a heartfelt testament to the value of being compassionate with oneself, even in one's darkest moments. And I
Yeah.
read it. I mean, this was not easy. And again, I interrupted you. Were you going to say something? Okay.
Oh, I just was going to say the being compassionate toward yourself. I think a lot of us, I speak mostly for myself, obviously. I don't want to put this on anyone else, but I think we can be very critical of ourselves.
Oh, you
And
think?
I think and I think when kids leave, and I mean, for me anyway, when they left and I felt sad or depressed or whatever, I also was mad at myself for feeling those things. It was like, come on, Morgan, get a grip, get a grip. But I think learning to be compassionate to yourself, talk to yourself like you would a friend. You wouldn't tell a
Yes.
friend, get with it, um, and you need to be your own best friend. And
Oh,
I
I
think
love that.
it's taken me a long time to learn that and to be that. But and I now carve out a much more, to use your word, I'm much more selfish than I used to be. But
Good.
it doesn't feel like I'm being, a princess or
Let's
whatever.
call it, I think we should change the word to self-full.
There
Self.
you go.
I don't know. That just came to me in that moment. Self-full.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think I really like my life. I also hang out with my husband a lot more than I did when we had kids and he was working,
Uh-huh.
whatever. And laughing with him, I think we talked about this before, is that if you can find somebody that you laugh with,
Yes.
that will last a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my favorite things to do. And we just do we watch TV. It's not like we're
Yeah.
having these great adventures, but we love just sitting, and we have dogs because,
Oh, yeah. You have
yeah,
dogs. So,
we have a lot of dogs. So the dogs are with us, and our dogs are very much a part of our life. And I also, I mean, I hadn't really thought about this, but we have two dogs. My daughter's here with her dog, so right now we have three dogs in our house. Um, but the dogs also give us, both me and my husband, a place to put our nurturing and our love. So our house is full. It's just full in a different way. It's full
yeah,
of,
no, I understand that. We're coming up on 2 years since we had to say goodbye to my dog.
mm,
And my house is empty. My nest emptied when we lost our dog, when we said goodbye, because and we were, for reasons we're not planning on getting, I'll never say never. I've never been without a dog in my life. So it's very sad and empty in the house. So I understand what that, look, there's nothing better than a pet, whether you're dog, cat, or whoever you are. Okay, so we're gonna bring this all together here. I'm Morgan. I thank you for sharing so much of yourself. If you really, really want ladies and everybody listening out there, if you have a friend really struggling with any kind of letting go, goodbyes, emptiness, the book is amazing. There's a link to it below. It's called Emptying the Nest, Getting Better with Goodbyes. It's by Morgan Baker. But, addressing the change can be fun. The first step is, I love what you say, is deciding that you don't want to be in the sadness anymore, and and what Morgan said, having compassion for yourself, talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend, get yourself help, understanding it's a process. You're going to get sad, and then you're going to take 2 steps forward. Then you're going to take a step back, then you're going to take 2 steps forward. There are moments, my daughter's 29, my son is 26, where I get sad when I don't see them. And when I don't talk to them, they're busy in their lives too. And yet I understand now the process of moving through that sadness and how to ask for what I need and want from them without guilt. And so it's deciding you don't want to be sad, getting the help you need, being compassionate to yourself. It's a process, and just doing things outside of your role as being a mom. That's what my takeaways are.
yeah, I think all of those make sense. I also think one of the things that I've learned, which um is frustrating, is that if I don't hear from them, that's actually sometimes a really good sign.
I know. It is.
Um,
It is.
yeah. And
So yeah.
and it's hard because I would talk to them every day if I could,
Yeah.
but if they don't call, I know they're taking care of themselves, they're figuring it out. They don't, and somebody, the best job that we can do is I'm quoting someone else here, but the best thing that we can do is become irrelevant. That obviously they're always going to love us and need us on some level,
Yeah.
but to
Yeah.
teach, to
That's
have them be self-sufficient.
That's true. Considering that this episode is airing just weeks after some people have dropped their kids off to college, maybe even like just days. Um, it's here's a common occurrence. I'm going to give you what to expect. That's like that book when you put what to expect when you're expecting what to expect when the kids go off to school and into the world, but especially college. They will be reaching out a lot in the first few weeks because they're navigating their new normal. And then all of a sudden, 1 week, you're going to realize you haven't heard from them. And it's a
Yeah.
good thing. They found friends, they're getting active in clubs, they're studying more, their workload. So I love how you said that, Morgan. Is sometimes know your child, if it's a good thing or bad thing, but understand that it's supposed to be them separating and they're busy with their lives. My daughter only called me while she was walking to and from school.
Oh, totally. That is a thing. That is a complete
They will
thing.
call you to and from class.
Yes.
Otherwise, no,
Right.
they're busy. They're busy. All right, that's a whole other conversation. But this was such a great conversation. But you don't get out of here without you don't get out of Beyond Empty Nest without a dare. And you have an and or, but I'm going to say it's a dare and a double dare. You can choose to do both. It's like two dares. So share the two dares that you have for our audience this week.
Okay, so as you would say, dare on. And the first one is to say yes to something that you sort of your gut would be like, no, I can't do that, but force yourself to say yes. And so we flew on a plane when we were in Hawaii with a pilot, and it was this tiny little plane, and he turned to me and he said, "Are you scared?" And I said, "A little bit." And he said, "Anything fun is a little bit scary."
Love that.
And so that is one dare to, you know, do something scary.
Yeah.
And the second dare is also recently I reached out to my high school, one of my high I actually have done this twice, but I reached out to my high school English teacher to say how influential and important he was in my life. And we actually had lunch and I gave him my book and he read it. And so my other dare is reach out to somebody, a teacher, a spiritual leader, a mentor, somebody who's helped you get through something or enlightened your life in a way, and say thank you to them. People don't hear thank you enough. So those are, and so those are my dares.
I love that. And that second dare, you just made me think. I recorded a solo episode all about a limiting belief that I carried with me for a long time. And it was because of my very first coach I ever coached with that I was able to move through it. I'm going to send her a message. I'm going to send a link to that episode because I talk about her in there. So thank you.
That's
Dare
great.
accepted. So dare to say yes to something you want to say no to that seems a little scary. Double dare, write a thank you note to a teacher, mentor, or spiritual leader, a message, a handwritten thank you note, who inspired you, supported you, or acted as a role model somewhere in your life journey, and let them know about that. I love that. Love, love, love that. All right, everybody. So what was it from this episode that you went, ah, that was so helpful? That's what I want from each one of these episodes. That's why these guests are here to share their stories, because we are all more alike than we are different. And there's something from each one of our guests that can support you through this messy, crazy, yet amazing thing called life. And I know there was something here. So let me know. Leave a review, leave a comment, shoot me a message. If there's something specifically you loved about Morgan, every way you can contact Morgan is below in the show notes. Send me a message. I'll forward it to her, I promise. But we love reading your aha moments. We want to hear from you. And if you like this episode, there's over 70 other episodes waiting for you to binge that are binge worthy for you, all supporting you through midlife, transitions, and beyond. Because as one of my other guests, Susan Guthrie, would say, everybody deserves a beautiful beyond. Yes. And with that, as I always say, dare on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Empty Nest. For detailed show notes and more information, be sure to visit jodysilverman.com. Have you heard of the Double Dares? Well, we're a community of moms and midlife women blending virtual and in-person interactions for connection, support, and exciting experiences. From Mommy and Me classes to soccer sidelines, moms have always found strength in community. And as we navigate the empty nest and other midlife transitions, having that go-to safe space and other women to lean on is a must. Ladies, this is not the chapter to do it alone. Our drama-free group echoes the sentiment of the Cheers theme song, a place where everybody knows your name and our troubles are all the same. If you've been seeking connection and have a desire to figure out who you are and what your purpose is now, then Moms Who Double Dare is the perfect fit for you. Only through the link in our show notes below can you explore and enjoy the first month at half off. Plus, with no contracts, there's zero risk involved. Join us today and get started on your journey of self-discovery, surrounded by new friends who understand and get you. You've sent your kids off to brave new experiences, meet new people, and discover who they get to be. Now, it's your turn. It's your turn to embrace this new adventure. If you're ready to dare on, I'm here to lead the way. Let's embark on this exciting journey together. Click the link below, and as I always say, dare on.